For today's agenda, just going to give you an overview of the Automation Hour webinar series, and then we will be talking about some of the upcoming webinars that we're excited to announce, and then who our sponsor is and the other co-hosts today with me. So after Jennifer's presentation, we're going to have time for question and answers. So if you have something that's related to a presentation, that's great. If it's not, that's great also. Any kind of automation question or answer it will be accepted. And if you have anything that you think of afterwards, we have a success group that you can add those to or ask those questions on, and somebody, either one of the co-hosts or somebody else in the community, can look to answer that for you. So for upcoming webinars, we have November filled up with Doug, Benjamin, Melissa, and Taylor. And then December, we have a little bit lighter of a month with just Mike and Megan. So we've got, the rest of this year packed up. But if you have a cool process automation use case that you would like to share with the community, we are still taking, everything for next year. Those dates haven't yet been assigned, so feel free to register. If you have preferred dates, we can try to work with that. But we are doing these, every other Friday, give or take, at 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. So we're not looking to change the time on when the webinar date would be. Logistics, all the lines will be muted except for the presenters. You can use the chat functionality to ask questions, and we'll look to answer those. Some of them will answer during the presentation, but some of them will be answered after Jennifer's presentation during the formal Q&A. And we will also have a recording posted after this session. And then there is also the links to our success community called Salesforce Automation Hour, and our website is salesforceautomationhour.wordpress.com. And thank you to our sponsor, Concrete.io, for sponsoring the Salesforce Automation Hour. Without them, it would not be possible. And here are the co-hosts. This is us at Dreamforce this year. We were excited to finally all meet in person, so that was a good time. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer.
Great, thanks David. All right, so I'm Jennifer Lee, Salesforce Business Consultant at John Hancock. I'm also a Salesforce MVP. I blog about Salesforce at jwlee.wordpress.com, where I post how-tos on Process Builder and Flow. I'm also a Trailhead addict with 170 badges and the social media manager for Women in Tech Diversity. You can reach me out on Twitter at JenWLee or on the Success community. So when I was thinking about content for my Automation Hour presentation, I thought, did I want to present something that I blogged about previously, do new content? And then I thought, all the production orgs have been upgraded to Winter 17, so this would be a great opportunity for those who haven't yet tested out the new functionality or haven't read through the release notes to cover off on the new features that have been introduced. So we have Process Builder and Flow enhancements that I'll be covering off on today's session. So for Process Builder, we now have the ability to reuse processes by invoking other processes into our process builders. With that, we will be able to see all the various process types in one place. We now also have access to drill into the owner fields in Process Builder. So prior to Winter 17, we could only access the owner ID field. And then as we move into flows, we now have the ability to, for the screens, to show the fields in a 2-column screen. We're also able to run flows in the Lightning UI, as well as add flow components to Lightning pages. So talking about reusable processes and why you would want to invoke processes. So there are two different situations that I can think of. The first one being wanting to implement simple nested if-then statements by invoking another process. So prior to Winter 17, if you wanted to do a second level of logic, you would have had to invoke flow or write code in order to do that. But now we're able to invoke another process. And a second situation would be now you could modularize your processes. So at Dreamforce, I gave a presentation on maximizing maintainability with Process Builder and Flow. And at that session, I talked about ways to, similar to what developers do with code and componentizing, modularizing code there, we can now do it with configuration. So I talked about there at Dreamforce how to componentize your flow, and now we're also able to do that with Process Builder. So just think about it as previously to Winter 17, you might be working on processes where your immediate actions, you're creating the same immediate action to create a task, and they're the same exact criteria that you're setting. So you're needing to do it multiple times. And if you ever needed to go back and make a change, you're going back and making it to the one immediate action, and then the other one, and then the other one. So with the ability to now invoke processes, you could make that change once, and it will populate or essentially point to it in all cases. So here you could either call a process within a process that has different steps, or you could just repeat things that you would call in either immediate action or scheduled action. So I'm going to drill further into what use cases for invoking another process. So our first use case here is automate process for new and updates to existing leads. So I have in this process 5 different criteria. New and lead source equals phone inquiry. Then we're going to take the immediate action to update the date assigned to CSR field to today. And then in the situation where there's a new record and the email is not blank, then we're going to send an email to a lead. Status is changed, status is open, not contacted, and the rating is hot, we're going to create an event. A next criteria is status is changed, status is open, not contacted, and the rating is medium, we're going to create a task. And the last criteria is owner name is Jennifer Lee, we're going to send an email. So the way that we could solution this prior to Winter 17, and we could still actually build it this way, is I have the lead object and I have the 5 criteria with the immediate actions to cover off on what I just stepped through. Now, if you take a look at your process requirements, you'll see that there's some commonality there. So in the first 2 criteria, I have a new record. In the second in the third and fourth criteria, I have status is changed, status equals open and not contacted. So the way that Salesforce executes Process Builder is that it will go through the different criteria nodes, and if it executes, it'll evaluate whether it's true, and then it'll go down to the next one and go down to the next one. So in that previous process builder that I set up, we have it evaluating the next step after it evaluates the process. So it'll go through and evaluate all 5 of that criteria. But what we could end up doing is with invocable processes is now introduce a second layer of logic. So, here what we could do is now narrow it down to 3 criteria that Process Builder will, Salesforce needs to go and evaluate. And then let's say if the criteria is new, then it's going to invoke a process called new lead, which will then say, okay, lead source equals phone inquiry, then update the date. Email is not blank, then send the email. And then secondarily, in the main flow, process builder, it'll go and take a look. Status is changed. Status equals open not contacted. If that's true, then it'll go into this lead status process, which then has the additional criteria. So it's the simple nested if-then statements. So the way that we could solution it now with Winter 17 is we have the 3 criteria nodes. So if new, then we're invoking the process new lead process. If the status is open not contacted, we're invoking the process lead status process. And this the last criteria remains unchanged. So here I'm just showing the 2 invocable processes that I've built. So it's running off lead, origin equals the phone, then update the lead, email is not blank, then send the email. And then for the lead status process, we're again running it off of lead. Rating is hot, we're going to create an event. Rating is warm, we're going to create a task. So in our next use case scenario, we have automate process for new and updates of existing accounts. So I have 4 criteria here. New or status change, the state is Massachusetts and the account is Universal Containers. We're going to invoke a flow, update account owner. We're going to send an email to the account owner and assign a task to the account owner. The next criteria is new or status change. The state is New York. We're going to invoke a flow to update the account owner, send an email to the account owner, assign a task to the account owner, and create an event. And the third criteria, account status is changed, account status is inactive. We're going to update the record type to account close. And lastly, new or status is changed, the status is gold. We're going to send an email to the Tier 1 team and account owner. So here's how it's built out in Process Builder prior to Winter 17 enhancements. So we have the 4 criteria and then the various actions that I went through. Now, if you take another look back at our process, you notice that the immediate actions, the 3 immediate actions are exactly the same. So here, instead of creating an immediate action for invoke flow, update account owner, send email to account owner, or assign task, and doing it twice within the same process, we're now able to create one invocable process and then call it within the main process. So we have, again, our 4 criteria do not change, but instead for the immediate action, we're now invoking the process, assign and notify account owner in both cases. It's going to set to always execute. And then for the immediate action, it's going to invoke the flow, update account owner, send email to account owner, assign task to account owner. Oops, sorry, go back here. So in both cases for the 2 criteria, it will invoke the process. And for the second criteria, it had the additional immediate step to create an event. So we'll still continue to have that immediate step because that's unique to that criteria. And the other 2 processes didn't change from the previous. So in our improved solution, for the first criteria, we're now invoking the process. For the second criteria, new state to New York, we're invoking the process and then we're creating that event. And then these other 2 didn't change from the previous. So we only have the one invocable process that runs off of account. We have it always executing, and then it has those 3 immediate actions that were the same. So the other enhancement with the introduction of invocable processes is now there's a new process type column. So here you'll be able to see which processes are the invocable ones, which cannot run on their own, so it would have to be invoked by another process. And where we have it blank, those are the master, what I call the master processes. So those will execute on when a record is changed. So additionally, with Process Builder, we're now able to further drill into the fields that pertain to an owner ID. So in the one scenario where I had owner equals Jennifer Lee, we're now able to drill into the owner ID, and I could further filter on first name equals Jennifer, last name equals Lee. So now moving on to flow, for those who use the screen flows, previously to Windows 17, we only had the one column format. So now we have the ability to choose between the one or two column flow screen format. And this requires that an admin enables the feature under Process Automation settings called Enable Lightning Runtime for Flows. So by checking that, now you have the option to use the two column format if you want. So for those who invoke flow using a custom button, this is now the additional syntax that you would add in order to use the two column format. So it's flow layout equals two column. So if you're just invoking flow directly without using any parameters, this is what an example syntax would look like. And if you are using flow and passing variables into your flow, you'll just put it at the end of where you end your variables. One thing to note is when the users tab between the fields, it will do tabbing of all the columns, all the fields in the left column first, and then the right column. So there's no ability to configure the fields to tab from left to right. Additionally, we can now run flows using the lightning skin. So the UI on the left shows the classic runtime skin, and then this piece shows the lightning skin. So if you're still on classic, you now have the ability to run your flow screens with the lightning UI. And this again, just to note, once you enable that lightning runtime for flows under process automation settings, you're able to leverage this functionality. So in determining what runtime experience your users will see, just to note, any flows that are embedded in a Visualforce page will always run in the classic runtime, regardless of whether it's invoked in the classic experience or the lightning experience. Flows that are run from a lightning page will always run with the lightning UI, and all the other methods of calling your flow would depend on whether you have this feature enabled or not. So if you don't have this enabled, they'll all run in the classic flow interface, and if you have that checked, it'll run in the lightning skin. All right, and lastly, we can now run flow components embedded in Lightning pages. So going into Lightning App Builder, you can now pull in a flow using a flow component. So a couple of things to be aware of as you're doing that is if you make version changes to your flow and you make changes to the input variables, that's going to render your flow component invalid. And in order to work around that, you're going to have to remove that flow component and put it back in and do a save. Some of the input variables that currently are not supported are collection as object collection, and single and multi-select picklist variables. The component right now only supports manually entered input variables, and it's only accepts a maximum length of 4,000 characters in the text input. If you want your flow to pass the record ID on the page that you're on automatically, in your flow, you're going to need to have a variable called record ID. And it needs to be spelled exactly like this, case sensitive. And that flow component will automatically pass the record ID into your flow. Let me pause for a sip of water. All right, so a use case for adding the flow component to a Lightning page is the business user needs the ability to add case comments to Lightning experience. That is currently a gap in Lightning, where case comments can't be created within the UI. So some of the design solutions around that is to add the case feed in order to add the comments. And that would require chatter. We could have the users flip back over to Classic in order to be able to add a case comment, and that's a little annoying. Or we could use Flow to collect the case comment and create the case comment record behind the scenes. So in situations where, like at John Hancock, where we're financial services, we might not be able to just easily turn on chatter without additional work in archiving the chats and whatnot. We selected to go ahead with the third solution, which is to use Flow. So here we're able to embed, I have the 2-column screen here to collect the case comment and to be able to select whether the case comment is viewable to the public or not. And when we hit the next button, it will automatically create the case comment in the related list. In here, I'm just showing the flow for the case comment. So this screen is showing the app builder where you have the flow component. You drag and drop it wherever you want on the page. And then from here, it will pick up any flow that has the screen component to it as in your drop down. And then you're able to select whether you want a 1 or 2-column screen. All right, so enough talk. We're going to go and do the show and tell portion of the session. Okay. All right, so going back to the invocable process piece, I do have our original new and updates to existing leads, where I have it running on the lead object when a record is created and edited. So for new and origin equals phone inquiry, I have the criteria running is new and the pick list for the lead source is phone inquiry. For the immediate action, we are going to have it run on the record that started the process and take the date assigned to CSR field. We're going to have a formula that sets it to the date of today. Our next criteria, new and email not blank. We have a formula running where the record is new and the lead email is blank, so essentially not blank. Then we have an email alert being sent, and we're calling this email alert. Nextly, we have that status is opened, not contacted, rating is hot. So our criteria here is the lead status has changed. The lead status pick list value is opened, not contacted, and the lead rating is hot. Then we're going to create an event, and we're going to set the event end date and time to a specific time. The assigned to ID will be the owner ID on the lead. We're going to set the event start time, and the subject I have here, meeting with lead and pulling in the lead's first name and last name. and the event is also related to the lead record. Then our next criteria, status open, not contacted, rating is warm. So our criteria here is the lead status is changed, the lead status open, not contacted is the pick list value, and the lead rating is warm. Then we're going to create a task where the due date I have set for today plus 3 days. Assigned to ID is the owner ID, priority is normal, status not started. Here for the subject, I have follow up with lead and is pulling in the lead first name and last name. And it's related to the lead record. And then lastly here, the owner ID, owner is Jennifer Lee. This shows the new enhancement to Winter 17 where we can now go and select owner ID information and be able to select additional information on the owner. So here we're able to do, first name and set that criteria. Oh, one thing I forgot to step through, and let me just show you guys right now. If you haven't already started to create a new process in Winter 17, when you do create a new process, you'll get this additional drop down here, process starts when. So if you want to create a master process, it will run on when a record changes, so that's a new record or an update to existing record. If you want to use that invocable process, that's when you would select the second drop-down when invoked by another process. So if I go over to my second process here, just want to show you quickly that here we have the criteria running on is new, and then we're invoking another process. So let me just show you quickly how to do that. So we're at another action. It's the step here. You're going to select processes. And we're just going to say new lead process. And this will just pull up all your invocable processes, the ones that you have active in the system. So we're just going to select this one. And then you then need to identify a record that the master process will pass over to your invocable process. So in our case, we're going to select the lead record that started this process. So with the status not open, not contacted, again, I'm invoking another process here. And then this third process I didn't change. So here for the invocable process, it just runs off of an object that you select. So here you're not indicating whether it's running on a record that's changed or a new record. So it's just the object that you want it to run on. And then your invocable process is similar to how you've been creating processes all along. So you identify the criteria and then immediate or scheduled actions. So it's no different than that. All right, so going on to the second scenario that I had here was the original process where I had it, let me just expose these. So we had the same 3 steps in the 2 criteria. So we basically, when we created it, manually repeated it twice. So in our new process, the updated one, we are now invoking a process here called the new account updates and notifications. So if I pop over to the invocable process, I have it running at all times, so we're not looking for additional criteria. And then I just basically recreated those 3 processes. So if in the future I ever needed to make a change, I'm making a change here only and not back on those master processes that are calling this process. So it essentially reduces the amount of maintenance you have to do later down in the road. I don't think we actually need to go over the flow, but let me pop over to the flow enhancements. So I'm currently in Classic, and I created two custom buttons to go to invoke my flow. So the first button, I actually have it running with the one column layout. And then my second button, I'm able to have it run on the two column layout. So how I built it behind the scenes, I have the flow that I created. So I have a screen that it's pretty bare bones. You know, it only has a case comment field, which is a long text area. And I have that as required. And then my second screen element is a checkbox that basically sets it to is viewable by the public. I have it set to default to be checked. So that in most cases, in my use case, we wanted it to show to the end customer. If not, then the user could just uncheck it. So that's my flow screen, and then behind the scenes, it does the record create on the case comments, where the comment body pulls in what the user inputted into that first case comment text field. And then is published is that checkbox, so whether they checked it or not, that's what's passed from the screen. And then the parent ID, we have the variable record ID. So this will come into play when we're adding this component to the Lightning page. So I also embedded my flow in a Visualforce page. So one of the things that you can do is instead of a button, you can actually have a tab go to a Visualforce page and execute the same screen. But for the buttons, for that first button that has the one column format, it's just the flow URL. For the one that had the two column format, I added that additional criteria here, flow layout equals 2 column. So if I go back to cases and I go to this create case comment, this is a Visualforce page that we're calling. So that's this page. So now lastly, what I want to do is within Lightning, we're on the case screen. And what I want to be able to do is now add the flow component to my page. So I'm going into setup, I'm hitting edit page, which will then invoke the Lightning app builder. Here we have the flow piece, so by clicking on it, automatically added it here. I actually want to move it down here. And then for flow, I had another screen element. So I'm able to select between them. I want to keep it at the case comment, and here I could select the layout. So we're going to do a save. All right, now we're going to go back to the screen. Now we see that we were able to quickly add this component. Okay, hi. And that just added it to the case comment related list. Now if I go back to the slide presentation, give me a sec, I have to switch back over to my screen. All right, so that's essentially it. Any questions that we have out there, David or Rakesh?
Yeah, give me a second. Okay, so one question from Mara is asking, we have not transition to Lightning, will this work just the same in Classic?
What function is the question asking about? Sorry.
I'm not sure. She is asking, she is not transition to Lightning. So I think she is asking for the flow that you mentioned, flow beta, Lightning experience.
Oh, showing the Lightning experience with the
Yes.
flow screens, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, so that currently works in Classic, Salesforce 1, and Lightning experience.
Okay. Okay, next question is from Marlene. She is asking, is there any way to see where used of invoked processes?
Where do
Is
where
there
do
a,
we
is there a way
see
to
if
see
there's a way
where,
to see where an invocable process is used?
yes.
Not that I'm currently aware of.
Okay, so one just suggestion. So if you delete a Apex class, the invocable process, okay, no, invocable process, no, we cannot delete it. I think just right, if you delete it and if it's referred somewhere, so it won't allow you to delete it and you will get some error, but not sure, never tried. Okay, next question is on process builder. How do you get the evaluation next criteria node to appear?
Can you repeat that again, Rakesh?
On process
builder. Yep.
How do you get the evaluate next criteria?
Oh, okay. Okay, got it. Yeah, hold on. Let me switch screens from the PowerPoint. Okay. All right, so let's go into one of the move things out of the way. So the question is, how do you get this to appear? So right now, by default, it would show up as stop, right? So you're literally just going and clicking the stop, and then this will pop up where you'll be allowed to switch between stop the process or evaluate the next criteria.
Okay. The next question is, in the first process builder, the event due date contained a specific date 1024. In the logic, what should this be? Today plus 3? Don't know.
Which
Not sure.
process
So she's
was
asking
the
in the first process builder,
Yep.
the event due date, yes, the event due date a specific 1024.
Was it on pass or event?
I think event. She is mentioning event due date contain a specific date 1024.
Yeah, so I had it set for 3 days out plus
Today.
10 hours into the day.
Okay. Okay. Next question from Mohammed Hassan. How do we create a visual flow whereby we have to create loops for two different objects in order to get the value for a fast update on a junction object? So I'm repeating again, how do we create a visual flow where we have to create loops for two different objects in order to get the value for a fast update on a junction object?
So I don't know if Rakesh, you and David can take that. I don't have too much experience with loops.
Okay, so you have to use two loops, like outer loop and inner loop, and Using that, you can use the decision element to compare the value, which value you want to use from outer or inner, and then assign it to assignment element using object variable, then object collection variable, and then later at the end of the loop you can use fast update element. If it's not making sense, so just please post your detailed question to our group Salesforce Automation Hour on Success Community.
I see the next one. I want to know ways to debug processes and flow. So if you listen to our last Automation Hour session that David Litton did, his session covered off on how to troubleshoot and debug.
Yes, so you can go and download last recording webinar from our website salesforceautomationhour.wordpress.com.
And if you can't, for whatever reason, find that recording, just post to the success community and we'll provide that for you.
Next question is there anything that you need to do special when you're creating a flow that you are going to call from another flow?
I would say the biggest thing when you're doing a flow that's going to be reused is to make sure that you focus on the variable values. And by variable values, I mean the input and output. So if you want the variable to be able to be populated by another flow, similar to how when you call a flow from Process Builder, that needs to be the input. And if you want that flow that you're calling to send values out, that would be the output. So you just, when you're using a flow that's going to be reused, you really want to focus on how those variables are set up as input, output, or input and output, or private, because you don't want to, you really want to use the private as much as you can so that when somebody's looking to reuse that piece of flow, that they don't see a ton of extra variables that they could pass values into. You only want to present the values that are needed. So it's just one of those things to kind of, you can set everything to input and output, and then you have, you know, a list of 5 or 20 or however many variables. But that might get a little confusing when somebody else goes to try to use your flow. So hopefully that answers that.
Next, with the new ability of user fields, how you recommend making a limit for a specific role?
I'm not 100% sure what Nicole's asking there. Jen?
No, I'm not either.
Nicole, could you
not really.
rephrase that and ask that question again so we can hopefully answer it?
Next question from Mohammed Hassan. Can process builder be used to create multiple record like fast create in visual flow? Can process builder be used to create multiple record like fast create in visual flow? Yes. Yes, you can. You can create n number of record create immediate or schedule action. Just remember, you can have only 2000 elements. It means 2000 action you can have in one process or flow or combine or everything in a single transaction.
Yeah, and that 2000 limit is typically what I'll run into as a reason to move away from Flow or Process Builder into Apex when you start dealing with a volume size that's pretty significant. Because especially with Flow, you're going to be using a loop and creating the values. So you really, anytime you kind of hit over 300 to 400 records where it's not a fixed value, and that could grow as the company starts to grow. Whatever kind of data source you're talking about, be it something based off of number of contacts at an account, or just current clients for the company. Anything where it's got the potential to grow to a threshold that would push it over that 2,000 limit is when you would want to start looking at doing it in Apex, because you aren't limited by the number of records as much.
Okay, next. I have used a visual force space with flow to control the finish location. Is there a different way to do this now so I can use the lightning skin? What is this? I have used a VF page with flow to control the finish location. Is there a different way to do this now so I can use lightning skin?
I don't know if you're aware of any way to do it outside of Visual Flow, but that's how I would normally do it.
Yeah, I don't know of a way currently if you're using a Visual Force page to get the Lightning skin, because even if you're in Lightning Experience right now and you have something embedded in a Visual Force page, it's going to revert back to that classic. So that's a good question, and something that I personally haven't yet jumped into to try to figure out a good workaround solution. Maybe I haven't really tried to create Lightning pages or anything to see what could be possible there, but
okay, done. So we don't have more questions here.
Last call. All right, so I'll post the PDF to the presentation out to the Success community. If there's any of the things that I showed today that you want a write-up on, step by step, post that to our Success community, and I can blog that solution out. I think we're all set. I don't see any more questions.
No.
Thanks everybody for joining today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.